want to thank everybody for taking some time out of your evening to join us. My name is Dennis Feldman, and on behalf of InstaRisa, I want to thank you for tuning in to the latest installment of the Face the Future webinar. For one, I do want to thank everybody for your patience. The fact that we had to reschedule this webinar, we had a lot of anticipation building up to it, and there's an old saying, man makes plans and God laughs. And unfortunately, the night of the webinar, Dr. Mirelez was stuck in an airport and dealing with some flight delays. So
for 16 hours, by the way.
16 hours in DFW. So we were very thankful that we were all able to make the event that we were going to. And unfortunately, we had to reschedule. So here we are, rescheduled, and really appreciate that. Everyone could join us. But the big thing is that this was born on the tribe. And for those of you that aren't a member of the tribe, we'll talk a little bit about the tribe later, but we have the InstaRisa tribe, which is a free community on WhatsApp. It's a great opportunity for clinicians to share, to learn, to ask questions. And it's just a fantastic community that started a little over a year ago. There's about 600 members right now. And we were in Dallas for a meeting, and the tribe was blowing up with a debate about same day versus next day delivery. It went on several hours into the evening, and then it picked back up the next morning. And we really knew that this was a hot topic that we needed to address. So we decided to make this the next subject of our webinar. And so for those of you that were part of that conversation, and obviously everybody who's registered, you know that our guest this evening for the InstaRisa Face the Future webinar really needs no introduction in this circle, but he's somebody that we all know and love and respect. He's the co-founder of InstaRisa. He's a wonderfully talented clinician, a man of God, a family man. He's very giving, very sharing as far as helping teach others. And tonight we get the pleasure of having the one and only Dr. Art Mirelez share with us some facets as to why you would want same day or next day delivery and what's optimal for the outcomes for your patients. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Art Mirelez.
Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm really excited to share, my journey and how things have evolved and some of the benefits that we have found by doing it the way that we've decided to do it. But yeah, this all came about because, when the tribe talks, we listen. And I think there's no right or wrong way to do it. I'll just start off with saying that, if you want to do same day, fantastic. If you want to do next day, fantastic. I'm here to just share the advantages and disadvantages of each of those. But nonetheless, let me jump into it. Let me see, I can share my screen here. Okay, well, let's jump into it. It's always awkward for me talking into a screen and not getting people's reaction. For all I know, you guys are, falling asleep already. So hopefully that's not the case. But listen, I just want to start off by saying that thank you all for supporting InstaRisa. When this started, gosh, I was thinking about this. We started doing, it wasn't called InstaRisa, but we started doing this digital workflow and embarking on it was in 2018 when Fernando joined my practice. And here we are, 6 years later, and never, ever, ever fathom that it would grow into what it has. So, with a humble heart, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for supporting us and being an active part of what we're doing and what we believe in, and also just sharing. The tribe is growing. The InstaRisa certified providers list is growing mostly as a direct result of just what you guys are experiencing with what we're bringing. So I just want to say thank you. But without further ado, let's jump into this. So I call this optimizing all-on-X outcomes. Same day versus next day delivery. And just to give you some background on myself, first and foremost, I'm a man of Christ, and I'm very proud of that because God has just blessed me beyond my imagination with my beautiful family. My wife is extraordinary. She puts up with me. She allows me to travel and go spread the InstaRisa word amongst the entire world, it feels like sometimes. She allows me to practice my craft, which I'm so passionate about, and still go home and with the juice that I have left, pour into my family. So I have 4 daughters. For those of you that don't know, I have 4 daughters. Yes, 4 daughters. I always like to say that my grandfather, we had the 4th daughter, he said, "You see, everything you did as a high school student is going to come back and bite you." So, but nonetheless, I'm blessed. So I graduated from UC San Francisco in 2002, UCSF, and I did a 1-year residency, a GPR, and that's really where I feel like my surgical skills and my passion for sedation and helping, compromised patients really started. And then I started my private practice in 2003. It's hard to believe, gosh, it's been 21, 22 years that I've been practicing. So now I'm the old guy in the class when I go take courses. I can't thank Carl Mish enough. He really helped me understand implant dentistry, and taking his curriculum and learning from him was absolutely amazing. And through him is where I actually heard of a guy named John Coyce. And John Coyce really has had a significant impact on my career in terms of shaping who I am as a clinician and also as an individual. And essentially, just to give you guys a little bit of background on InstaRisa, I'm a Coyce clinical instructor, and as a result, that just means that we have to have a thorough understanding of what John preaches when it comes to facially generated treatment planning and execution. And what I did is I just took what he had taught us in the analog world and just converted it into the digital world. And so a lot of the things that you see with InstaRisa in terms of the workflow and the records are essentially what John created in the 2D world, in the analog world. And Fernando and I just converted it into the 3D world. So we started InstaRisa, like I mentioned, in 2008, and here we are. So if any of you guys want to get in touch with me, email is probably good, or you can follow me on these social medias on Facebook and Instagram. So, this quote by Albert Einstein, really, when I read it, I feel like these 2 people in this photo really are the epitome of this quote. Try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. And both John and Fernando pour their heart and energy into their passion and their desire to really share what they've learned with the dental community. And I'm very, very honored and blessed that they're a part of my life. So I just want to give them both many props and thanks for everything that they've done to contribute to what we've been able to develop here. All right, so many of you guys that have taken our courses have seen this slide before. I really strongly believe that core values is the foundation of any business. And for that mention, these are even my family core values. So core values is what guides us, what really keeps us true and honest, and it keeps us committed to what we believe in. And for me, it starts with my faith, and the others just fall in line with the result of being a man of Christ. So, one of the things that really struck me today was just excellence. I came in to see some patients today, and when something doesn't go smoothly, you have to ask yourself at that moment, are we just going to kind of just gloss over it, or are we going to take a step back and do things the right way? And one of the things that I encourage my associates and a lot of young dentists is don't skip steps, right? Because if you skip steps or you just kind of overlook it, it always comes back and bites you. And even though it's going to take an extra hour or half hour, whatever time to redo something, it's going to pay dividends in the long run. And I feel like that's really what it describes excellence, So, when it comes to excellence, I really look at things in terms of pursuing perfection in order to achieve excellence is something that I think we should all strive for in dentistry. So with that being said, let's get on. So for those of you that are new to InstaRisa or are interested in learning more, I want to encourage you guys to scan this QR code and sign up to be on the tribe. The tribe is, like Dennis had mentioned, it's just a group of dentists, dental assistants, lab technicians. Everybody's invited to just give their insight, share their point of view. Do it respectfully is all we ask. And it's a community to just really help us just learn and just uplift, what dentistry has to offer together as a community. So, but let me give you guys some background. I thought it would be interesting to understand the background of All on X so that we can put perspective in terms of why we do things today, the way we do them, and why some people have chosen to do things another way. So back in 1993, believe it or not, that's 30 years ago, Dr. Palomalo created this protocol all on 4. And it first started in the mandible, and he tested it, and he felt that it was something of value. And then in 96, he started doing this all on X protocol, which was essentially loading implants, 4 implants that were strategically placed in the jaw and loading the teeth immediately. In 1999 is when Palomado introduced the Malo bridge. And the Malo bridge is really what determined why we do FP3s. Why do we do bone reduction? It really is based off of the Malo bridge. So Dr. Palomalo determined that you need X amount of space for the restoration to help prevent it from breaking. And so one of the things that we talk about in our courses is this was 1999 when people were utilizing milled bars or casted bars, denture teeth, and acrylic. Fast forward to today, the materials have significantly changed. And so I firmly believe that it's not necessary to have 16, 18 millimeters of restorative space in order to prevent breakages with the types of materials that are used today. And so with InstaRisa, one of the things that we promote is that it's all 3D facially driven treatment planning and execution. So if we know that today's restorations are stronger than what was done in the past, then there's no need to have 16, 18 millimeters of restorative space to help prevent breakages. And 2003 is when Nobel released the all-on-4 concept to the market. So we're looking at about, 20 years ago. So in reality, let's keep this in perspective. Everybody's wanting to do all on X. Everybody's jumping on board because for whatever reason, right? But it's only been around for 20 plus years. And so when patients ask me, what do you think? How long is this going to last? I can't say indefinitely. I can't say, hey, it's going to get 40, 50 years because we really don't know. We really don't know. In reality, this all on X types of restoration that are immediately loaded have only been around for 30 years. So I just ask that we just be honest with our patients because I'm already seeing a lot of I would say about 20% of my practice is revisions from patients that have these restorations that are failing. Either the implants are failing or the restoration is failing. And as a result, it's a costly rehab, unfortunately. So in 2008, I talked to a good friend of mine, Dr. John Brockloff. And Dr. John Brockloff was, part of the initial group who went over to Portugal to learn directly from Palomalo. And what he shared with me is that, he was one of the founders of Clear Choice. And in 2008, they brought this concept to the United States. And he shared with me that when they first came, they were performing their surgeries on Mondays and Tuesdays. And they were actually delivering those restorations on Friday. So this next day concept, many people think that Clear Choice is the same day, but back then, that's what they were doing. But what happened is due to logistics, right, they got busier. They had to make a decision, and that's when they decided to hire lab technicians to help support, the workflow that they were doing. And then they started to delivering same day. Once the lab technicians came into the picture. But unfortunately for them, what they started to notice was a human resource nightmare because they were starting these cases at 8 a.m. and these cases were sometimes going until 9 p.m. So if you can imagine, if you're doing same day, which some of us are, and you are scheduled from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then you got to get up and you got to do the grind all over again the next day. By the time you get home, you get showered, you get some rest and sleep, you're back at it. It makes for a tough day. So those are the things that Clear Choice experienced even back then. And in 2015, I actually met a friend, Dr. Michael Tischler. And in 2015, he was pitching this idea to me, and he called it Teeth Tomorrow. And he was saying, Art, listen, I do this concept where I don't deliver the teeth the same day. I deliver them the next day. And back then in 2015, right, teeth in a day or same day teeth, all these, key phrases were being pitched as a marketing thing. And so when you heard teeth tomorrow, it was just like, oh, I don't want teeth tomorrow. And what you start to realize is that concept was more something that it was tougher for the patients to deal with rather than it was tougher for the dentist to acclimate and to understand, like, maybe this is an idea. But Michael Tischler said, hey, no, listen, there's many advantages to teeth tomorrow. And so I heard him out. So let's go over that. Let's go over some of the advantages of, first off, if you're delivering the teeth the same day. So you're doing the surgery, your patient's coming in, you're sedating the patients, you're placing the implants, and then the patient's going to go home that same day with teeth. Well, of course, that's an advantage, right? Patients are going home with teeth. You don't necessarily have to deal with the patient the next day or a few days later. They're out of sight, right? And so from that perspective, in terms of how many appointments, yes, for sure, you're saving an appointment. So that's an advantage. There's no need to come in the next day or several days after to deliver the teeth. For example, if you're doing all-on-X restorations on a Friday, maybe it's going to be a little challenging for you to get your team to come back in on Saturday to deliver these teeth. So from that perspective, same day delivery is definitely a huge advantage. Some people say that if you're doing FP1, you should really think about doing same day delivery of the restorations. And so if that is where you stand, that's where you feel that's necessary to really enhance the outcome, then for sure, for FP1s, then I'm going to say, there's an advantage to delivering it the same day. Here's some disadvantages. So the disadvantages of same day are, what I have found is that if you're doing this digitally with a digital workflow, there's going to be extra time needed for the design that needs to be finalized, and then 3D printing that restoration. That added time could be more than if you were to do same day with an analog workflow. So analog workflow, having a prefabricated denture or smart denture conversions. I've had dentists that say they can do a smart denture conversion in 15 to 30 minutes. And let's be honest, with the digital workflow, it's going to be more time. And it's as a result of us being at the mercy of the technology, right? 3D printing takes time. Post-processing takes time. Staining and glazing takes time. If you're using tie bases, cementing tie bases takes time. So all that is extra time that's needed if you're doing it digitally. So for sure, some of the disadvantages of doing same-day delivery with a digital workflow is the added time that's necessary. And this time can be significant. It can be anywhere from 1 hour to 4 hours of additional time if you're doing the conversion or you're doing 3D printed restorations for the same day. So another disadvantage is if it's analog, then if we're doing a conversion, the disadvantage is that you're going to have a structurally compromised restoration, period, right? For the most part, unless you have a restoration that has a milled bar or some type of reinforcement within it, that restoration by far is going to be more compromised than delivering a monolithic restoration. And how do I know this? Well, I'll give you guys a little bit of background. I stopped doing immediate load restorations for 3 years of my career. And the reason I stopped doing it is because I started to realize that the complications that came about after the immediate load analog conversion was significant. Patients were breaking their restorations, they were cracking their restorations, and lo and behold, it always happened on a Sunday, right? When I was either at church or I was out of town. It always happened on a weekend. And it was a moment of just stress, right? And for those of you that are doing these types of restorations, you know what I'm talking about. When you can't help a patient that needs help, if you're doing an analog method, that's one of the biggest downsides of doing these restorations analog. In fact, there was a dentist in town who was out of town that does all on X restorations, and it was a conversion. It was an analog, and he needed help. And so one of my employees helped his patient, but unfortunately it was an analog restoration. So it took time. We had to take the restoration off. We had to, take it to the lab. We had to add acrylic to it. It was just a big problem. And I don't like not being able to help my patients when they're in need of help. I mean, these patients are paying a significant amount of money. And, if I paid that type of money, I would hope that I would be able to get the help immediately. So that's another disadvantage, is that you're going to be providing a restoration that's structurally compromised if you're doing a same day conversion, specifically conversions. So the other thing is same day disadvantage is that, when you give the patient the teeth, typically those patients, they're sedated. And if they're not sedated, let's say you didn't do sedation, then they're tired, right? They're numb. They're drooling. There's blood all over the place. Everybody in the room is typically exhausted. The patient's exhausted. The doctor's exhausted. The clinical partners are exhausted. Everybody just wants to go home. And so it doesn't make for a grand, occasion when you deliver the teeth the same day. The reveal, and this is for me is the biggest thing, right? The reveal isn't captured as a special moment. Think about that. These patients have been missing their teeth for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and they're going from no teeth to teeth. That's a really special moment. And I didn't realize the power of the reveal until we started doing it the way I'm going to show you. So the other a disadvantage of the same day is that there's extra labor, right? So let's think about that. When we are doing a conversion, whether it's digital or analog, and the patient's in the chair, there is increased overhead. We are paying the nurse anesthetists. We are paying the dental assistants. We are paying the team sometimes, the laboratory technician. We're paying the front desk. Everybody's getting paid to help babysit that patient while their teeth are being converted. So that cost is significant. Whereas, I'm going to show you if you do next day, so then you can just do the surgery and get the patient out the door. But there is extra labor expense when you're doing same day deliveries. Okay, so let's talk about next day. Next day disadvantages. What are some of the reasons you should really consider not doing this next day delivery? Point simple, some patients want to go home. They just want to go home with teeth, right? Especially if your advertisement is saying teeth in a day or same day, smiles, whatever it may be. That's their expectation. They're coming in and expecting to go home with teeth. So if for some reason things don't go smoothly, then, you're in trouble. Your office has to be open the next day if you're doing next day delivery. So maybe doing all on X restorations on a Friday is not necessarily a good day, or the last day of the week that you typically work. Patients may need anesthesia is one of the things that people talk about as far as doing next day delivery. I will just share that, I think that's rare. I think that has a lot to do with how you design the restoration. But it is possible that you're going to have to numb the patient the next day when you deliver the restoration. We have patients that come from out of town. And so one of the disadvantages is now they have to, rent a hotel. They have to stay in town for an extra night. And so that is definitely a disadvantage of doing next day delivery that you should definitely consider. So next day advantages. Let's talk about, doing it the next day, delivering the teeth the next day. What are the advantages? Well, I will tell you, this is something that I realized when I decided to consider doing next day delivery, is the surgical appointment was shorter. So if you're doing same day delivery, I want you to your next case that you do, as soon as you put in your last stitch, right, or you get your record, whatever record it may be, as soon as that surgical procedure is done, from that moment to the time the patient walks out the door, put yourself on a clock and determine how much time that is. Maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's 45 minutes, maybe it's an hour. I don't know, whatever it is. But in order to really understand the power of doing next day, you have to understand how much extra time you're spending doing same day. Because what I've realized is that, my surgical appointments are much shorter. I'm not having to deal with a patient that's uncomfortable, or I'm not having to worry about, getting the patient out the door as fast as possible, because typically the surgery is what takes the most time, and then they're done. Patients go home to rest and the convenience of their home, right? And so I don't know about you, but whenever I have a surgical procedure done, I just had a colonoscopy a couple of weeks ago, and I just wanted to go home, man. I just, like, as soon as I woke up, I'm like, get me out of here. I don't want to be in a hospital. I don't want to be in this, recovery room. Just get me home. And there's something about just being home in your bed, on your couch, with a blanket. It just the whole healing process to me it starts much quicker. So the patient goes to go home immediately. This is for sure. All the lab technicians, when they read this, there's less stress on lab techs. I'm sure they're nodding their head saying, yes, that's true. Just tell you a quick story. We, with InstaRisa, we go out and we do demos. And if you're interested in learning more or seeing the InstaRisa workflow, then we'll go out to your office and show you. And there was this doctor who was absolutely adamant about doing same day delivery. And no matter what I did to really encourage him to think about doing it the next day, he was adamant. No, we're going to do the same day. Okay, so we go over there, and it's Fernando and I. And surgically speaking, as far as the records go, everything went really smoothly. It was an FP1 case. And so after the case is done, I bring the doc over. There was a few other docs there, and I start going over a lecture, and I'm presenting InstaRisa, the workflow. And we're probably an hour into this lecture. And at this point, the laboratory is doing the digital processing, their 3D printing and restoration. And I'll never forget this, right? Because I had just finished telling the doctors, like, hey, maybe this is why you guys should consider doing next day. And the timing was impeccable. All of a sudden, the lab technician rushed into the room, and she goes and whispers into the doctor's ear, and the doctor just says, oh, and runs out the room. I knew exactly what had happened, right? So what had happened is that the patient was there for an hour already, and there was a misprint. So the doctor was so frustrated, because we know that's going to have to start all over again. And these things happen in the laboratory, right? Technology doesn't always work seamlessly. Your printer can go down, the lights, whatever it may be. So that particular day, right, I kind of chuckled, and it just confirmed that, there's so much stress that's added on the lab technicians. How many of you dentists go over to the lab technician when you're delivering the same day, and you're like, how much longer? How much longer? How much longer, right? It's like, we want this to be done as soon as possible. Right? And it's never fast enough when we're doing, and it just adds stress to the lab technicians. So the other advantage of doing it next day is that now, at least in my practice, I'm fortunate where we have 3D printers, and we also have mills. And in my practice, we mill the restorations. And what I'm finding is the restorations are definitely stronger when you're milling PMMA versus printing. Not to say that printing's, not a good thing, but if I had to compare the two, definitely milling restorations is a stronger restoration. And for sure, depending on what type of PMA you're getting, it's more aesthetic. The PMA is more aesthetic, but even if you're printing and you're delivering the next day, the doctor's not hovering over the lab technician, asking them how much time there is in order for the patient to get out the door. And so the technician now has the convenience of just delivering a beautiful aesthetic restoration. And for me, that's my billboard. That's my marketing, right? I want that thing to look pristine where, patients constantly say, my friends are saying, well, I thought you're done. Why are you going back to the dentist? And I tell them, well, it's because I got to get my final restoration done. They're like, well, what's wrong with that one? Right. And it's because we deliver it the next day and it looks drop dead gorgeous. So the other thing is delivering the next day. It takes 10 minutes, literally, per arch. In my practice, I have an amazing team where essentially they deliver the restoration and then I just come in and check the occlusion and celebrate, right? And so that takes about 10, 15 minutes an arch to deliver. It's definitely, without a doubt, much easier to check a bite when you're delivering the next day. So why is this such a big deal to me? As you guys know, I'm really big on occlusion and aesthetics, and there's no way of comparing checking a bite the day that you deliver the restoration on the same day versus checking the bite when you deliver the restoration the next day. It is night and day. These patients, they just want to go home, right? You tell them tap, tap, tap. And then if the occlusion's way off, you're grinding like crazy, right? And so as a result, if you deliver the next day, the patient is not numb, they're wide awake, they're biting naturally, and so you're able to get a much, much more refined occlusion when you deliver the next day. And as you know, right, the better the occlusion, the less risk you're putting onto your implants. So I want to minimize my risk for implants not integrating. And I strongly believe is if you got your occlusion dialed in and you have a passive fitting restoration, chances are, your success rate is going to be significantly higher than the guy whose occlusion is way off and even has a passive fitting restoration. So for sure, this is the biggest advantage is that when you deliver the next day, your patient's not exhausted, right? They're not numb, they're not drowsy, they're not bleeding all over the place, right? It's an amazing reveal. So when it comes to labor, for sure, that there's less labor involved because I'm doing the surgery and I'm taking my records and the patient's out the door. If it's a straightforward case in my practice, from the time the patient walks through the door to the time that they leave per arch, it's 2.5 hours. And they're done, right? So, and that's pretty standard. And depending on the complexity of the case, the goal is to get the patient out the door so they can go home and rest in the convenience of their own home as soon as possible. And so, for me, the biggest reason why I think next day delivery should be considered is the reveal. The reveal. What's so special about the reveal? And we call it the InstaRisa reveal. We make this a big deal. In fact, when you come to our course, it's proof of concept. We do the records, we do the surgery on day 1, and then we deliver the restoration on day 2, always. And so the nice thing about the reveal is that you're able to get the entire team involved in this process. And so many people will say, well, hey, delivering the next day, that's not something that I've ever considered. That's not something I'll do. That's not something my patients will go for. And unfortunately, I don't think the sound's going to work here, but I'm going to play this. And as Jay's talking, maybe I can just share with you what he's saying, because we tested this earlier, right, Dennis, and the sound wasn't working. But just to give you guys some background, this is my buddy, Dr. Jay Lopez. He teaches the occlusion course with me. He's out in Tucson, Arizona. Love this guy. He's just a phenomenal clinician. super smart, super dedicated to providing excellent dentistry. And this was literally his first day. So Dr. Jay Lopez, he took our course, one of our initial courses, 3-4 years ago. And this was his first case that he did InstaRisa style. And what he claims, he sent me this video, and I want to play it.
My name is Jay Lopez, and I just wanted to give a ski trip over the weekend. Prior to the weekend, did a InstaRisa style, InstaRisa workflow, utilizing one of their InstaRisa certified labs, dental creations.
Can you hear that, Dennis, or not? No go? Okay, so let me just summarize what Jay's saying. So Jay said that this was his first case. He did the case on Friday, and he went to Colorado for the weekend to go skiing. And he delivered the restoration that was manufactured by an InstaRisa certified lab called Dental Creations with Armando. He delivered that restoration on Tuesday. And he says it took him 10 minutes to deliver the restoration. Everything was spot on. The patient was happy. The team was happy. It was a big celebration. And so, many people say, hey, delivering the next day. Well, Dr. Jay Lopez, right, he's delivering them 3 or 4 days later, right, successfully. And it's just the way that he does things, right? And so I think a lot of it has to do with just how we deliver. So I think it's pretty clear. Why I choose to do next day delivery is mainly due to 2 things. One is it's not going to be possible or practical for you to do next day delivery unless you have a predictable workflow, right? Because I'm reflecting back to when I was doing same day delivery, and the other advantage of doing same day delivery that I didn't mention on here was that when things don't go right upon delivery, you're making the fixes while the patient's sedated. So the patient is clueless, right, that the teeth don't look right in the face, that the bite is way off, that it wasn't a passive fitting restoration. They're clueless about it. And you're just fixing, you're there, tinkering and dabbling and trying to make it work while they're sedated. So that's a huge advantage of doing same day delivery. But once we said, hey, listen, we have a very predictable workflow, right? The next day the patient comes in, I can throw these into the mouth from across the room, and within 10 or 15 minutes, my team is screwing them in, and, very minimal adjustments, aesthetics is spot on. That's even more reason to do next day delivery, in my humble opinion, because it's predictable, right? I don't want to look foolish and look like an incompetent dentist if I'm delivering next day and things don't fit right or things don't look right, right? I can't hide it. I can't, there's no way to fool the patient. It is what it is. But when you have a predictable workflow, it's not a big deal. You just deliver it, right? The other big reason that I do next day delivery is because of the reveal. And the reveal is huge. The reveal has so many advantages. The patient's emotional reaction on this next day when they see their teeth for the very first time is so powerful. For those that you guys that know me, have taken my courses, especially here at my office, you know that culture is so huge in my practice, right? And the quote that I love is that culture is going to eat strategy for breakfast. It doesn't matter what your strategy is for delivering these restorations, right? But if you have a phenomenal culture and your team buys into it, they're just going to want to do this over and over and over again. And so the way the patient reacts the next day, when they are wide awake, they're not numb, they're not drooling, they're not bleeding all over the place. And what we do is we actually always encourage them to bring their significant other the next day. And we sit the significant other in front of them. And their significant other is the first one to see their teeth, right? Not the patient. Patient, we don't let them see their teeth. Their significant other sees their teeth. And when the patient sees their significant other's emotional reaction, oh my gosh, that's powerful. So Who is it great for? It's great for the team, right? So what we do here is we rally up the team. Everybody in my office, literally, we shut the office down. And the team comes together. My lab technicians are present, my treatment coordinators present, my clinical partners are present, my associate dentist, everybody's present. If it's a referring dentist, then the referring dentist is here too. So what that does is it's huge for morale, right? And so people say, well, how are you doing 15, 20 arches a month and delivering next day? It's easy. So I'll give you an example of my schedule. On surgical day, if I have a double arch in the morning and double arch in the afternoon, that's kind of like best case scenario. Those are not fun days, by the way, right? I don't like to do double arch in the morning, double arch in the afternoon. That's a lot of hard work. But let's just say that's what we're doing. So what we'll do is the double arch in the morning, we're going to always deliver that arch at 11 a.m. the next day. Why do I do it at 11 a.m.? I do it at 11 a.m. because I want that moment of the reveal to be special. I don't want to be rushing. And so I know that's going to carry me into lunch if we go over. And so as a result, then the entire team, right, we're there to celebrate that moment. We take photos, whatever is necessary. My afternoon patient, I'll bring them in at the end of the day the next day. So that typically they're coming in at about 3 or 4 o'clock the next day to deliver. So it rolls into the end of the day, so we're not rushed. Here's my point. Don't rush the reveal, right? Don't schedule a bunch of things around a reveal and not capture that moment. Capture the moment, take it all in. It's a special moment for your team. It's a special moment for the patient. I mentioned this, the loved ones, we always ask them to bring their significant other to sit there and be part of the reveal. That is so powerful. Many times the loved one is videotaping the entire reveal. Lots of times is because we put this on social media and they see other people and they want to show this to their family. We've had patients, loved ones who have family members on FaceTime, literally on FaceTime, showing their significant others what the patient's reaction is going to be like for the first time. Dr. Adrenaline, man, if you want some adrenaline, do a reveal the next day. I'm telling you, like when I used to do same day, I was just tired. I wanted to go home. The next day, it's like, ooh, let's do this. Let's do another one. Let's get it going, right? It's so powerful. And I think that's why we do full arch is, I still do veneers. I do still do crown and bridge. I love that stuff. I don't want to do it every day, all day. But I'll tell you, the adrenaline that I get from doing these on-X restorations, delivering the next day, pales to comparison of what I do, the adrenaline I got from doing veneers. And so that's another reason. And then marketing, the power in marketing when it comes to capturing the reveal, capturing that moment, and really using it to help promote your practice is huge, absolutely huge. So this is what we do, right? We'll record every single reveal, and we want to zoom in on the emotional parts, right? So emotionally speaking, when these patients are crying, when they are smiling ear to ear, when they are just giving you big hugs, like a patient is right now. My patient's leaving right now. Nonetheless, these are very, very special moments that need to be captured. And then what we do is we put these on social media, and nothing moves a patient like emotional dentistry. Nothing, right? I don't care how perfect the smile is. None of that stuff matters. What matters the most is when you showcase these reveals on your social media. And you can look here on the right side, right? That's the wife that's taking a photo of her husband's smile for the first time, right? And many times it's interesting. The significant other's emotional reaction sometimes is more profound than the patient's emotional reaction. The tears just start coming down. So we have iPhones from different angles. You don't have to get anything fancy. I think raw footage is what's really sells and what's really powerful. And we just push these onto our social media. And some of them are edited. But this is one thing that my buddy John Brockloff shared with me. It was kind of interesting. So as I mentioned earlier, John, he's done over 3,000 arches. It's just amazing. And he has every single one of those arches documented into a little black book, I guess is what we can call it. And so I asked him, how many arches have you done? He literally said 3,293. And this was as of, I don't know, a month ago. So he's probably more than that, I'm sure. But one of the things that he shared with me, and I had to quote him, he said, when he was doing, because he's just a surgeon, not just the surgeon, but he would just do the surgery at Clear Choice. And then the prosthodontist would be doing the conversion, right? And when the patient would come back for their post-op with John, lots of times the patient didn't even know who John was. Why? Because the teeth were being delivered the same day. So here's John, right? He's doing all the surgery. He's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And so the patient comes back and doesn't even know who John Brockloff is, right? And so I quoted him. He said, Art, it stung a bit when only 3 out of 10 patients remembered me when I delivered the teeth the same day. Delivering the next day just works better for the patient, the office, and the doctor. And so I think John said he's done about 300 out of these 3,300 arches. He's done about 300 or so next day delivery. And he said he'll never want to go back to doing same day delivery. So that's pretty profound, right? From somebody that's done 3,300 arches, 3,000 same day, 300 next day. So I thought that was a really interesting quote. So again, one thing that's absolutely necessary is you have to have a predictable workflow to do next day. If you're thinking about doing next day, it has to be predictable so you don't have pie in your face. You're not disappointing patients. And so, when it's done digitally, then one of the things that I've realized with the InstaRisa workflow that is, number one, it's predictable and the stress level comes down. And we're going to lower your hard costs for technology and lab fees by doing it digitally, for sure. We're going to reduce the number of appointments that you're having from going from A to Z, right? From the time the patient walks into the door to the time they leave, definitely less appointments than doing it the conventional way. With the InstaRisa workflow, we can do it in as little as 4 or 5 appointments from start to finish, predictably. You're going to save time at each appointment. And at the end of the day, you're going to have increased confidence and profitability. But most importantly, the entire team is going to be happy. But most importantly, the patient's going to be happy, right? And I think that's what's most important is, why are we doing what we're doing? Are we doing it for ourselves? Are we doing it for our families? Are we doing it? No, I mean, for me, we're doing it for the patients. We're changing patients' lives. And yes, we all benefit from that. But if we really focus on the patient, put the patient first, do what's necessary for them, then it's easy. So one of the things I want to share is that when you're doing next day delivery, it really comes down to presentation. How am I presenting that? And I'll share this story that I had at one of our first courses. There was a dentist that had been doing same day delivery his entire career. And at the InstaRisa course, of course, like I mentioned, we deliver the teeth the next day. And so he talks to me the second day of the course. He's like, hey, Art, I love everything about InstaRisa, but I just don't know if I'm going to be able to deliver the teeth the next day. And I said, well, deliver them the same day. And of course, we talked about it's going to be added time. And so he says, no, I'm really considering doing next day, but how do I convey this to my patients? How do you do it? How do you get patients to buy into going to get their teeth the next day? And I said, well, let's start by you telling me how you paint the picture to the patient about getting the teeth same day versus the next day. He's like, well, I deliver same day all the time, but there's been a couple of times where I've thought about doing next day for whatever reason. And this is what I told the patient. I just said, hey, listen, we have 2 options. I can deliver the teeth the same day, or I can deliver the teeth the next day. What do you prefer? And I started chuckling. I started laughing because I'm thinking, well, shoot, we live in the United States. Everything is immediate gratification, right? We need it right here. We need it right now. And from a patient's perspective, of course, they're going to say the same day. So I said, listen, that's the first thing. Don't give the patient the option, right? And so in my practice, it's very simple. In fact, my team does the delivery. They give the patient the workflow in terms of how we're going to do things from start to finish. And when I come in, if it ever comes up, right, I just say simply, and I think here's the key phrase. I'll tell the patient, so we have a very, innovative way of doing things here at our practice. Everything is super, super precise. And what we're going to do is this. We're going to place the implants on day one. It's going to be a relatively short appointment. You can, plan on being here for 2 to 4 hours. You're going to go home immediately and start resting. And overnight, my team is going to custom make your teeth. You're going to come back the next day. It's going to take about 10 or 15 minutes. We're just going to attach your teeth. 99% of the time, I don't even have to numb you, right? How does that sound? Great, let's do it. But what I have found is that when I say we're going to custom make your teeth overnight, the patient now senses like there's a benefit, right? There's a benefit to doing this and getting my teeth next day. And if I ever get pushback, it's very simple. Well, listen, if you want your teeth to look natural, you want your teeth to be very, very strong, and you want this to look, if you just want this procedure for you not to have to be in a chair for so long, then getting your teeth the next day is the best way to do it, right? I very rarely get pushback, but it's all about the delivery. How do you deliver it? And I realized that when I say we're going to custom make your teeth overnight, for them, there's something about telling somebody that you're going to custom make something for them. They automatically understand that it's going to take time, right? And all the restorations, I would say the only time that I deliver the same day is if I'm not available the next day. So if I'm going out of town or whatever it may be. But we do our surgeries on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And so we typically are delivering the next day. So I want to take you through a case here. This is Rocio to give you some insight of what you can anticipate things looking like when you deliver the next day. Because one of the pushbacks that we get is, man, the patient's going to be swollen. They're going to be numb. You're going to have to anesthetize them. It's just not going to be a fun. Well, let me show you. This is just a routine case. So this is Rocio. And what we are going to do is, I think this is an upper arch that we were going to focus in on. She'd been wearing a partial for quite a long time. And so it was kind of an easy decision to do an upper immediate load all-on-X restoration. So as you know, with InstaRisa, with our process, we are always going to capture all of the records prior to surgery. And we're going to take a facial scan. We're going to take our bite scans with our facial scanner, an intraoral scan. We're going to take our CBCT. For those of you that are interested in using guides, then the idea is that we're going to design the ideal 3D facially driven design and then import that into our implant planning software. And then you place the implants precisely based off of the final restoration design. So as I've mentioned 1,000 times, it is not an InstaRisa case unless you have the final restoration designed before you pick up a handpiece, before you pick up a forceps. It all has to be designed first. So as in this case, this is Rocio's case, we design it, we get to show the patient now what their smile is going to look like. If they love it, great, we just go on. If they want to change it, no problem, we change it, but we get their approval before. And people ask me, do I show this design to every single patient? No, I don't. I show this design to the patient that is very particular, is very hands-on, right? Has very high aesthetic demands. And I've shared this also in my courses. It's a very simple question. Do you want the smile that you once had or the smile that you've never had? And if they say that, if they go on and they're talking about their smile for 5, 10, 15 minutes, then I'm going to make sure that they see the design. If they say, no, Dr. Mirelez, listen, I want the smile that, I've never had. And then my follow-up question would be, would you like to help design this beautiful smile, or do you want to trust my professional opinion? And 90% of the patients say, I'm going to trust your professional opinion. So at that point, 90% of the time, I'm not even showing this smile design to my patients because they trust me. But those that want to get involved, it's not a problem. You get on a Zoom meeting with my designer and you design your smile with my designer, and with the InstaRisa workflow, what you design is literally what you get. There's no disclaimers, right? Exactly what you design is what you get every single time. So this is Rocio. The next day, it's painless, right? This is what she came back looking I even did a connective tissue graft here on this upper right side. But this is the amount of swelling and the inflammation that you can anticipate the next day. And so as you can see, it's very minimal. We've developed our FP3 healing abutments so that there's a nice wide emergence profile. So as soon as you take these out, right, the next step is we're just going to go and suction around each multi-unit abutment, make sure there's no grafting material in this place, and then we just seat the restoration. The other key thing is design. You know, the design is essential. If you have a designer that doesn't understand how much compression you're going to be placing on the tissue, yeah, the patient's going to be jumping out of the chair every single time. You're going to have to numb every single time. For those of you that are using our InstaRisa expert designers, you know that that's very rare. We have it dialed in. We know exactly how much pressure to put onto this tissue so that you don't have to anesthetize the patient. You seat the teeth, you screw them in, 5 or 10 minutes later, right? The patient's going home with beautiful teeth. These are her teeth, right? Next day, you can see the amount of compression that we're putting on the tissue is very minimal. What you design is what you get. As I've mentioned 1,000 times, right? You got to make sure that you show me the face when you're doing these deliveries. With our process, it's modelless. You don't need to have a model when you're even making your final restorations. You have the option of having a model if you choose to, but here's the final restoration in zirconia. Beautiful restoration. These are all done by my amazing lab technicians, in-house, Marlon, Leo, and Nayar. I mean, they're phenomenal. They just make me look good, right? I had nothing to do with this. This is 100% my lab technicians. And so here you go. Here's the Rocio before. Here's Rocio after. As I've mentioned 1,000 times, when you post a case, please show me the face. These are Rocio's final restorations. And this is just a joyous moment, right? Delivering the final restoration. I don't know if this is going to come through, but this is my setup in my office, and these are the emotional reveals that we have. We make this a big deal, right? I purposely, by design, have the mirror set away from the patient, approximately, 24 inches away from the patient, so they're not getting up close and personal. But this is what happens the next day. Imagine if I had delivered these teeth the same day. I don't think I'd be getting these reactions, right? I mean, this patient just absolutely loves the team. She loves what we've been able to do for her. And just time and time again, right? When you deliver the next day, the patient's not numb. It's just very emotional. My entire team is there to see it. It just helps build a community of people that just want to share this life-changing procedure that all of us are blessed to be part of. And, these patients, I mean, I could watch this over and over again, right? I mean, these are genuine smiles. I'm telling you, if you're delivering same day, I doubt you're getting this, right? Look at the significant others recording, right? And they're seeing themselves for the first time. No anesthesia, just absolutely, a special moment that we capture and we celebrate. And here's the best part, right? Going around the room and thanking my team. And this page, I mean, this happens a lot. Look what she does. She goes around, she's hugging every single person. She's taking the time to hug them and give them thanks and praise, right? Because she appreciates what we've done for them. I don't know, but when I was delivering the same day, I'm sorry, you guys, I know I'm being biased, but I was not getting this. And these are the things that really help build your practice. When you have a team that fully believes in what you're doing and how you do it, selling cases is easy, absolutely easy. I honestly, my team sells the case. I walk in the final 10 or 15 minutes of the consultation, and I say this over and over again. By the time I walk in, the only thing I can do is screw it up, right? The case is sold because they see this. They see the predictability of it. They see the efficiency of it. They see the quality of work that we're providing these patients time and time again. And these patients, I mean, they're raving fans. I guarantee you that they're going out and they're telling others. I've had so many patients come back and say, hey, I sent such and such to you. Or, hey, did such and such come in to see you? or patients, new patients saying, you know what, I saw that video online. It was very emotional. I have patients that sometimes we don't do the reveal like this. We'll do it in the operatory, and they're like, "Hey, I want to go out there." Right? What's really cool is the way I have my office set up. From my lobby, if you're sitting in my lobby, you can see this. So I have patients that are here for consultations getting to see the reveal, right? And they're seeing this reaction of the entire team and the patient, and it just gets them motivated to move forward with treatment. So nonetheless, I know I'm biased. Next day delivery is the only way I like to do things. And the proof is in the pudding, right? These patients are the reason that I feel like my patient is thriving and is successful is because we take the time to celebrate these moments that otherwise maybe are going to be missed if we're doing same day delivery. So I think hopefully my timing is good here, Dennis, but I want to share this quote, right? It's not about what you're capable of. It's about what you are willing to do. So think about that, right? Mike Tomlin, great coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think this is so true. And when Ben shared this with me, I shared it with my daughters because all of us have the ability to do things, right? But are we willing to do it? Are we willing to put in the extra time? Are we willing to adapt? Are we willing to change? Are we willing to invest? Are we willing to go the extra mile to have the wins that we're all striving for? So with that being said, I want to thank you guys. Hopefully this was of value, putting this together. I'm truly blessed to have my team. I can't do this without my team. Every one of these team members really makes me, look good at the end of the day. And I thank them from the bottom of my heart because none of it's possible. And one of the first things I do is, at these reveals is when you do these reveals, here's a last little tip. When you do the reveals, they may be a little uncomfortable initially. But if you just keep these three things in mind, when you're having the conversation with the patient, ask them three questions. What was your life like before? What was the process like with my office, right? What was it like during the process? And what do you look forward to the most? If you ask those three questions, that's just great content. And it really just brings out the emotional part that you're really hoping that these patients provide so that you can just continue to share these special moments with your team. So again, hopefully that's helpful, but we ask those three questions all the time. And it just makes for a special day. So with that being said, thank you guys very much. Click on the QR code if you're not part of the tribe. I hope this was of value. I'm truly blessed that all of you guys are part of what we want to share here with InstaRisa, and I look forward to sharing more. Thank you.
Art, that was fantastic. Thank you for that presentation, and I appreciate that everybody was tuned in to the new setup with Zoom. I was remiss in not going over the Q&A, but we did get some questions coming through. So that being said, if there are any other questions, folks out there, just click on the bottom of the screen where it says Q&A, and I'll feed those to Art here real quick, and we'll go through these. The first two that we got really are hitting on the same subject, talking about doing this second day delivery. Is there a maximum amount of time that can go by when you're doing an immediate load case? Like, is there a number of days that you feel it's still clinically acceptable to load the case? I know you talked about cases going around the weekend in the early days. What do you think is relevant today?
Yeah, I think as long as you're doing it within 4 days, you should be fine, 4 to 5 days. I've had, like I mentioned, Dr. Jay Lopez. I think he does his surgeries on Thursday and he delivers them on Tuesday. So most of the swelling is going to take place typically on the 3rd and 4th day. So keep that in mind, right? So ideally, if you want to minimize the amount of pressure that's going to be put on the intaglio restoration, then keeping it within 3 to 4 days would probably be ideal, just from being comfort perspective. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Another question here. You had mentioned about tissue pressure. And the question we got is how much tissue pressure is needed for a painless and correct delivery for FP1 or FP3?
Yeah, it's a great question. So typically it's about 0.4 millimeters of pressure is what you want to put on the day of delivery. I think this is a fine question for our designers. But the last time I checked, that's the number that they wanted when it comes to an FP3. An FP1 is I touched on it, but I want to go a little bit more into it. My FP1s are always next day. I never delivered, FP1s the same day when I've done the digital workflow with InstaRisa. And we have to remember what really, really determines where that ovate pontic goes. It's not the tissue, it's the bone. So knowing where the bone is going to be essential for an FP1. So, that's a whole other course in itself in terms of where to put the ovate pontic, but essentially designing it accordingly. And our designers thoroughly understand where to put the ovate pontic in relationship to the soft tissue. But I would say that for FP1s, in general, I'm trying to remember. I very rarely numb. I mean, it's probably less than 10% of the time, even on FP1s that I'm delivering the next day, that I have to anesthetize the tissue.
Right. Great answer, Art. Next one here. How do you discuss the opposing arch with the patient when they don't want to restore those opposing teeth?
Yeah, it's a conversation that we have. I come from the point where I'm going to meet the patients where they're at, as long as it's not going to severely compromise the long-term effects of my single arch restoration. So what I tell the patients is this, is if the opposing arch has teeth that are going to compromise the aesthetics, let's just say it's the upper arch that I'm doing, then they have to understand that. And if they're willing to accept the compromise aesthetics, and now I can show them with a 3D facially rendition of what their smile is going to look like, and they accept it, then we'll move forward. But many times what we need to do, let's just say the patient's like adamant, I don't have the money, I'm not interested, I don't want to do the opposing arch, because that happens. I say, okay, fine, but I need you to understand the risk. Number one, the risk is that aesthetically and functionally, it may not be ideal. But what we could do to help improve this is we can do serial extractions on the opposing arch. So if there's teeth that are super erupted or just, not in the right position, I will always, and always is a pretty strong statement, if my second molar on my opposing arch and my third molar are compromising my upper arch, I'll just extract those teeth. Why? Because if you look at studies, and we went over this at our occlusion course, there's studies that can confirm that patients that have premolar occlusion can chew and function normally. So if I have two premolars, right, I can chew and function normally, is what the studies show. So if I'm having a patient have two premolars and a molar on the antagonist, and I'm extracting the second molar and the wisdom teeth, no harm done, right? Even if I have to, now those teeth, obviously, that I'm extracting, they're biomechanically compromised, right? They have decay, they're fractured, or their perio's at risk. They're super erupted. That's why I'm extracting them. So lots of times you can provide a favorable outcome by doing serial extractions. And sometimes I'll even do maybe just localized crowns to just even out the occlusal plane, just to help that patient. Because what happens is, I have countless videos of the reveal where the patient, they came in for the upper arch and they're looking like, oh my gosh, that looks beautiful. And they'll say, oh, well, we got to do the lower arch now, right? So I'm not pushy, right? I'm not going to make every patient do a double arch, because let's be real, docs. How many of you guys have $50,000 right now that you're willing to give me to fix your mouth? That's reality, right? And that's what we're asking our patients to do. So, to be of the type saying, oh, I'm not going to do it. I'm like, come on, you're not helping the patient. Let's help the patient. Let's do something to move them in the right direction. Maybe it's not ideal, right? And then I also have the conversation is if when you do the lower arch, if the upper arch is compromised aesthetically or functionally, then you're going to have to consider redoing the upper arch, right? All those conversations are had. So I find that that's helpful.
That's a great answer. I think that adds some value to the benefit of that next day delivery as well, to have that more impact. So
Yep.
great answer. Another quick question here is, what material do you use to close the access holes on the screw channels for the healing teeth?
For the healing teeth, yes, we use, oh my gosh. It'll come to me. Where's my team at? I'm like, give me that stuff. It'll come to me. It's the pink stuff.
Gingifast?
Gingifast. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. So we use Gingifast always. And so for those of you guys that are not having success for Gingifast, some of the things that I hear is that the Gingifast doesn't stay in, that the patients come back because it pops out. Very simple fix. Have your lab technicians or just docs, before you deliver it, get a diamond burr and just create a slight undercut on the access hole and use a rough diamond, because what that's going to do, it's going to cause friction for the Gingifast to not slide out. If it's a parallel access hole channel, then yes, it's going to come out. But if you just invert it a tad and roughen it up, very rarely is that stuff going to come out. If it's coming out due to the amount of space that you have, then that's your fault. You just didn't do enough bone reduction, right? Because that channel should be pretty deep where it's not going to be popping out. So sometimes that happens even with my pterygoids, right? They're way back there and the access hole's not very deep. But roughen it up and just put the Gingifast in there. And what I like to do is I'll have my clinical partner has a 2x2 alcohol swab. I'll inject the Gingifast, and with my glove finger, I will wipe the alcohol 2x2 and then wipe off the excess, and I'm done. So literally you can fill these access holes within a minute, you're done. So that's been the most predictable way that I have found versus the other methods that I think that I've tried in the past.
Sounds quick and easy. Looks like we got one last question here. Say that they said they're getting good results with smart denture conversions. Patients are happy going home with teeth, and reveals are still great. Why would they want to move to a digital workflow?
Yeah, I think this is some of the responses that we get when doctors are curious about moving into digital dentistry. And it's very simple. You know, going into specifically the InstaRisa digital workflow, there's more time on the front end, right? And typically, when I say more time on the front end, is that phase 0 appointment, where we're scanning the face, we're scanning the teeth, we're scanning the bite at the proper vertical. And then we're using those very precise records to design the restoration. But that's a 3D facially designed restoration. So yes, there's more time doing that. But the time that is spent on the front end is significant compared to the extensive amount of time people are spending on the back end after the teeth are delivered. So let's just say even everything's just spot on, right? Which is pretty rare, let's be honest, right? I've done conversions. It was a celebratory moment when things were spot on. Whereas with the InstaRisa digital workflow, it's a huge disappointment when things are off, because you're not accustomed to it. So it's a paradigm shift of how we react to things. But what we're finding is that if you can get it spot on at the time of delivery, then all of the appointments thereafter are easy, right? Because you nailed it on day one. And so now I'm only taking 2 more appointments to get to my final restoration. Once I have my teeth in the patient's mouth, the patient comes back 3 or 4 months later. Once the implants have integrated, I'm taking my scans, and typically I'm delivering my prototypes the next appointment, and I'm delivering the final restorations the following appointments. So 2 appointments later, I'm done. And that's routine, right? That's a routine workflow. It's not just every now and then. So for those that say that they have, now let's just say that they're getting predictable results with the digital denture conversion. Well, we have some docs that say, hey, listen, I love my digital conversion, my conversion, my smart denture conversion, whatever it is. It's working for me, it's fast. Okay, great. Continue doing that. But I know that it's not going to be spot on thereafter. So once the patient comes in for their final restoration records, then let InstaRisa digital workflow kick in then, right? Because we're going to use that smart denture conversion that I know it's off. There's always room for improvement. Whether it's aesthetics or function, there's room for improvement. We'll take records at that appointment, but now your prototypes are spot on, right? Versus going through all the steps necessary to try to make it right. And don't even bring up 2D photography to me. That's a whole other lecture. There's no comparison, you guys. Absolutely no comparison with 2D photography versus 3D, facially designed restorations.
Yeah, we'll save that for another webinar altogether. Let me take one more look here at the Q&A. And then we got a question here. What material are you using for your provisional teeth?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate. I have a mill. So for the most part, we're milling our healing teeth. I think that's what you're referring to as a provisional teeth. We call them healing teeth. And just briefly, we call them healing teeth because I want the patients to know that their teeth are healing, right? I don't want them going out and biting onto rocks. So, but nonetheless, we use a PMMA. It's a very inexpensive PMMA. I think we get our PMMA for like $8 or $10 a puck, right? So price comparison, it's not really a big difference from printing versus milling. But with that being said, right, taking on milling is a big endeavor, right? It's not as simple and as easy as taking on printing into your practice. But so for us in my practice, we're pretty much just milling those restorations. Now, when we do print, then we're using Flexera and Onyx. And the only time in my practice that I print is when I need something fast. Excuse me. And that's my determining factor. If I want something fast, then I'm going to print it. If I'm not under a rush, I'm going to mill it. Always, just in general.
And looks like we had one more in here asking if you utilize a titanium bar.
No. So, we were using titanium bars in the past, and at least in my hands, what I found is that the restoration that was sitting on top of the titanium bar, whether it was zirconia or it was PMMA, it had a tendency to break. And so we abandoned titanium bars, gosh, 3 or 4 years ago. And if it's working for you, great, continue using it. It may have just been, the way we're designing them. But what we have switched to since then is I have the Zirconzon system. And so we use Technomed instead. And so we're doing essentially a hygiene bar. And it's a ceramic reinforced resin material. It's similar but different than like Trilor. It's more biological. There's another great product out there that we're going to start trying as a result of Dr. Munir Eskandar's suggestion. It's by Breedent. So more to come on that material. But whenever we are doing, in fact, I just delivered one today. It was a double arch zirconia sleeve onto Technomed. Those things, they're lasting. So, but for the most part, yeah, I've abandoned titanium bars in my practice.
Well, Art, I thank you for wrapping up all those Q&A questions there. And, I have to admit, this was a lot more in-depth of a conversation than I imagined when we first set out to have this webinar. I thought it was pretty cut and dry, but I think there was a lot here, and I really appreciate you being so thorough and sharing your knowledge. And one last thing I want to share here, I'm going to take us over to another slide here. I'm going to share my screen, just a couple things. Again, this is the InstaRisa Face the Future webinar. I believe this is our 5th one that we've done. Some of those are exclusive for InstaRisa certified providers. So another benefit of of joining InstaRisa is that there is exclusive educational content. So, of course, stay tuned as we announce more topics, more guests, more webinars in the Face the Future series. This is something I really want to take a moment to highlight. This is a course that's been a long time coming. We know that there are a lot of surgical courses out there, and there's a lot of prosthetic courses out there, and we have brought the best in surgical courses and the best in prosthetic courses together. It's a juggernaut of dental education, and this is the InstaRisa Worley All on X Live Surgical Course. And it says right there, take your All on X game to the next level. If you tuned into the podcast with Dr. Mike Worley, you understand that, that's a big step to go from good to great. And if you want to be great with prosthetics, you want to be great with surgery, and you want to learn from great clinicians that are dealing with minimally invasive, patient-forward treatment planning and surgical execution, this is the course for you. Come down to Puebla, Mexico. It's a 4-day course. You stay on site. It's all you can eat. There's a beautiful view, rooftop gym, wonderful hotel inside. Literally, this picture you see on the top right of your screen is that beautiful facility Dr. Mike Worley brought. And if you have any apprehensions of traveling abroad, this is definitely a great way to go. You don't have to fend for yourself. Everything's included. It's like staying at a resort, except for you have the benefit of learning and serving the wonderful people of Puebla with these All on X cases. And when I mentioned earlier, minimally invasive and patient forward, we're going to be doing some FP1s and some FP3s. Of course, we know that those are going to be patient specific, but we're going to be treatment planning in the most patient-friendly, minimally invasive way possible. You're going to feature instruction from an all-star cast featuring Dr. Mike Worley, Dr. Art Mirelez, Dr. John Brocklov, Dr. Keith Klaus, and Dr. Ashraf Sawaya. So it's definitely going to be great to come down to Puebla. Here's some of the details, training topics. There's the live hands-on surgical training. You're treating patients from start to finish. So you're going to take intake records, you're going to plan, you're going to execute the surgery, and then you're going to fabricate the restoration and deliver it to the same patient, which is almost unheard of in this educational space for dentistry, that you're going to take a patient completely through tip to tail. You're going to work through InstaRisa's 100% model-less 3D facially driven workflow, and you're going to be changing lives predictably, and you're going to bring home a ton of nuggets that you can put to practice in your office on Monday morning. There's a brief agenda there. The big thing is bottom right-hand corner of the screen is the QR code. Go ahead and take a screenshot, click that with your phone, or you can go to instarisa.com or wiic.org for more information. Ultimately, you're going to talk to Tammy Worley and get registered for the course. She'll take care of all the arrangements for you and make it a really easy process. As I said, we had Dr. Mike Worley on the most recent episode of the Face the Future podcast. If you haven't checked those out, episode 1 featured the one and only Dr. Art Mirelez, and episode 2 featured Dr. Mike Worley, and we shed some light on what's going down in Puebla and a lot of the things that you need to hear about and why you need to attend that course. And of course, if you have any questions, reach out to info@instarisa.com and we can direct you wherever you need to go and answer all of your questions. And, I do want to thank everybody for taking time out of their evening to join us. We're so excited to bring this to you, and we'd love to see you join us on the WhatsApp group, the InstaRisa Tribe. Again, here's that QR code. Art had invited everyone to join and come and share and learn and have a little bit of fun while you're doing it with the InstaRisa Tribe. So hope that we see you there. And again, I'm Dennis Feldman. Just want to thank you for tuning in. We had Dr. Mirelez here sharing a wonderful breakdown of same day versus next day deliveries. And we hope to see you again next time. Take care, everybody.
All right, guys. Have a good night. Thank you.